Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Today my topic of presentation is software testing. My name is Muhammad-Naeem. I am working as a SQ team lead in Contour Software. So why software testing is important? Sof Software testing is important due to the fact that uh, if there is a bug and end user is start using the software, it may have uh, critical issues like there is a landing of the flight and there is a critical bug in the software. The whole flight was crashed due to the bug in the software. So therefore, software testing is very important before deploying the software in the uh, production environment. So my agenda about the software testing is to discuss about the what is software testing all about, software testing types, and the software testing techniques as well. So let's talk about what is software testing. Software testing is a method to check whether the actual software product matches the expected requirements and to ensure that software product is defect free. So software testers ensures uh, that the release software is free from all the critical bugs. Uh, It is very difficult to say that the software is defect free, but at least all critical bugs are should be identified uh, during the software testing when software is in testing. Uh, there is one another definition about software testing. It is an integral part of software engineering, where the purpose of the introduction of this concept was to validate the build of the proposed software and verify its working according to the software requirements specifications. There are multiple definitions of software testing, but the main purpose or the idea is to validate the software as per the requirement. There are two more categories in software testing. One is verification and validation. So we will cover uh, basic basics of the software testing in this current demonstration. So what is functional and non-functional testing? Functional testing, as with the name, it describes that it basically tests the functionality of the software under test uh, based on the requirements of the client, which is called the requirement specification document. There are different kinds of functional testing. Let's talk about unit testing, smoke testing, integration testing, and system testing. Uh, Unit testing is a very basic approach followed by the programmer, in which a programmer basically validate their program by writing a unit test of a particular unit. It helps developers to know whether the individual unit of the code is working properly or not. Sometimes quality assurance engineers or software testers also coordinate with developers to help identify the scenarios to write unit tests. Okay, let's proceed about the smoke testing. Smoke testing is a very important testing type in which software basically test before the deployment in the QA environment. It is also known as the entrance criteria for the software testers. Let's talk about integration testing. It focuses on the construction and design of the software. You need to see that the integrated units are working without error or not. For example, if there are two groups, one is working on payroll and one is working on general ledger. So when both modules are ready, then we see that both modules are working in integration, uh, th- and this actually comes under the umbrella of integration testing. Let's talk about system testing. If there are multiple modules of the software and your software is ready and it is compiled, then testing strategy checks the functionality, security, and portability amongst all the other module of the system. So you test the software as a whole in system testing. Let's talk about what is non-functional testing. Uh, it doesn't mean that we are not testing the software, but we are checking the software as non-functional aspects, for example, performance, usability, reliability. Basically, we are testing the application for usability and the security of the application and the performance of the application. There are multiple types of non-functional testing as well. Let's talk about load testing, stress testing, and usability testing. What is load testing? In testing, we provide a particular workload uh, for its response time in a real environment, depicting a particular workload. And we see that for a particular workload, application is working fine. For example, if a particular application handles 100 users simultaneously, then we provide load of 100 users and see what is the response time of the application and how it basically handles the load. Let's talk about stress testing. In stress testing, we provide the extra workload to check if it works efficiently and is able to handle the stress. As I mentioned that if your application is able to handle the 100 users workload, then we provide the workload of 101 users, and then we increase the load uh, until the fact that it actually reaches to the bottleneck. And we see that whether this application is able to handle that stress or not. There is one example that if a website which is tested behavior that at very peak hours, if there are more users come, then application should respond properly. It should not display any error page or crash at runtime. Sometimes in for stress testing, we use automation tools to create workload of simultaneous or uh, particular users. There are commonly used tools like JMeter and different environments like distributed testing environment of AWS as well for stress testing. For usability testing, it is basically we test that whether the application is user friendly or not, and also it behaves as per the standards if it is for a particular industry. Security testing is nowadays is very very important nowadays. Uh, we in security testing we provide multiple techniques like we also use penetration testing and see that if the network is safe from the malicious attacks. The key areas to be tested in this testing include authorization, authentications, of the users and their access of data, and see that these access is not compromised at any level. Uh, there are multiple terms popular nowadays like ethical hacking, uh, penetration testing, uh, SQL injections as well. So let's talk about software testing techniques. Software testing techniques help you design better test cases. Since we are talking about software testing techniques. Software testing techniques help you design better test cases since exhaustive testing is not possible. Manual testing help reduce the number of test cases to be executed while increasing the test coverage. They help identify test conditions. There are multiple techniques of we will discuss few techniques here: boundary value analysis, equivalence, class partitioning, and decision table. So what is boundary value analysis? It is also called BVA. Boundary value analysis is based on the testing at the boundaries between partitions. It includes maximum, minimum, inside or outside boundaries, typical values, and error values. Basically, large number of errors occurs at boundaries, uh, and therefore we test the software for boundary values. It is a very important type of black box testing. This software testing technique based on the principle that if a system works well for these particular values, then it will work perfectly for all the values. Here is an example of boundary values. For example, if there is a valid input between 1 to 10, then the values will be 0, 1, 2, and 9, 10, 11. So here you can see that we have include 0 and 11 for boundaries. Here is a diagram. You can see here that the minimum input is 1 and maximum input is 10. So here we have included 0 in minimum input and our minimum input is 0, 1, 2 and the maximum input is 9, 10, 11. Here you can see one diagram which mimics that if we have x as minimum value, then we will use x minimum minus, and we have input as normal values, and then we have x max and then x max plus values. Let's talk about equivalence class partitioning. In equivalence, class partitioning allows to divide set of test conditions into into a partition which should be considered the same. Basically, in this type of testing, we divide the input domain of a program into classes of data in which test cases should be designed. The concept behind the technique is that test cases of a representative values of each class is equal to a test of any other values of the same class. It allows you to identify valid as well as invalid equivalence classes. Here is an example. If we have input conditions, we also have seen this example earlier that we have input of 1 to 10 and 20 to 30. So here are the five equivalence classes. 0 is an invalid class, 1 to 10 is a valid class, 11 to 19 is invalid, 20 to 30 is valid, and 31 to onwards is invalid. So we will select all digits from each class to validate the software. For example, -2 from invalid class, 3 from valid class, 15 from invalid, 25 from valid, and 45 from the invalid. here you can see equivalence class partitioning diagram that our invalid input is -2, valid input from 1 to 10 is 3, invalid input from 11 to 19 is 15, valid from 20 to 30 is 25, or invalid is greater than 30 is 45. There are multiple examples like if you have a form in which you have to enter age and the accepted value for filling the registration form from age 18 to 45. So uh, below the age of 18, there is an invalid input. From age 18 to 45, there is a valid input. And from 45, greater than 45, you have invalid input. So you can test this field for three different values. Uh, OTP. You receive OTP, one-time password, when you basically doing one transaction, and there is a valid input of 4 digits. So you can enter more than 4 digits and less than 4 digits to validate the OTP field. Order amount, you can validate order amount for negative values and for zero and something like that in equivalence class partitioning. So here is one more important technique which is called decision table. The decision table is a software testing technique which is used for testing the system behavior for different input combinations. This is a systematic approach where the different input combinations and their corresponding system behaviors are captured in a tabular form. This table helps you deal with different combination inputs with their associated outputs. Also, it is known as the cause-effect table because of associated logical diagramming technique called cause-effect graph that is basically used to drive the decision table. So let's see one particular example. Uh, we have one login screen and we need to create decision table for this login screen. So here is the example of the decision table. We have one table in which we have conditions, uh, rule 1, rule 2, rule 3, and rule 4. We have username, password, fields. We need to input values. F is stands for false and T for stands for true. In rule 1, we are entering invalid username and invalid password. They both are false values. So output would be error. In rule 2, we have valid user but invalid password. The output would be error. In rule 3, if we have invalid username but valid password, we would have output as error. But in rule 4, if we have valid username and valid password, then we have output as success, right? So this is about decision table. I would recommend you to go through edureka.com and gru99.com for further uh, enhance your knowledge about this. Uh, so that's all from my demonstration. Thank you for watching.